You see it with the people that are there, an unhealthy amount, but they're the ones that are, excelling. And concept artists are just drawing just an insane amount. And if there's something they don't know how to do, they're frustrated by it. The next few days, you just see them just grinding away at it. And and then a few days later, it's like, that's something I could never have believed I could, or anybody could, do, like, from where you started. So it's all about just, putting in the time.
Welcome back to the Pencil Kings podcast. I'm your host, Mitch Bowler from pencilkings.com, where we help artists become better artists. Today, a unique guest. I've known Ty for almost 30 years now. We went to the same elementary school, same high school, same university. Then we worked together for a little bit in Shanghai. And then we parted ways, and Ty has sort of carved out a niche for himself. It's extremely important in everything that we do right now. Mobile phones, web, video games, like interactive television, interactive anything. So very big, warm welcome to Tyler Lee to the call. Ty works at Bioware up in Canada. How are you doing today, Ty?
Good, thank you. Very nice intro. Thanks very much.
So to start off, why don't you give people a 2-minute overview of sort of what you're doing right now and sort of the last project that you worked on and where you were in that process?
Sure. So I am a UI artist at Bioware, which is a user interface. So menus, things you click on, the kind of interactions of the game. So I work at Bioware on a game called Dragon Age Inquisition, and I was the UI lead, which I was responsible for just that, getting the UI and all the systems related to it, like customization and RPG mechanics to the game. It's shipping this month, so I'm just having a little bit of downtime right now, so it's kind of nice.
So for those of you that aren't familiar with the game, it's a role-playing game, and role-playing games are kind of unique because they're the type of games that have a ton of icons and user interface elements. Am I correct?
Yeah. So lots of maps and like you said, icons, like thousands. I don't know. I'm sure we're over 1,000 unique icons, like all very small pictograms drawn, graphics, things like that. Things that need to tell the user or player something at a glance. So a lot of care and thought goes into those, which people probably take for granted. But
so let's just say one icon. Let's say that you're using some kind of a spell. What would the amount of time that goes into that single icon by the time it's like concepted, an artist works on it, passes it to the lead, passes it to the game designer, and back and forth? How much? Yeah, how many man hours do you think goes into a single icon?
Yeah, it's kind of hard to quantify because it's not like we just work on one image because we'll work on over often 100 at a time. One feels like you're going days working on because you get into a rhythm and say you may be doing 10, 15 a day and Devastator, skulls and flames and or whatever, and everything's going really well, and then there's one that comes across and draw dignity and so how do I capture that with 64 by 64 pixels? And there's a lot of different techniques we try when we get frustrated with that stuff because it can be hard.
Awesome. Why don't we rewind a little bit and tell people how you got started? I know your story, but why don't you just tell it in your own words?
Hard to map. Like most people I've talked to in the industry, it's kind of hard to map their path. But it always kind of comes back to the same thing. I wanted to be in this kind of industry or film. As far as I've known you, we've always been drawing, sketching after school or during class, and I always wanted to draw and do stuff like that. And then took every art class I could, went to art school, looking into more animation. It was the thing that I was really passionate about, but I kind of found it was something I was really interested in, but the discipline itself, I was very frustrated by. So that was when I started looking at a lot of other medium and exploring things like 3D modeling and graphic design and just different types of, art you can do with Photoshop and stuff like that. After that, I went to Shanghai and I worked with you for a bit. In games, outsourcing, and a little bit of freelance work afterwards in small games. This weird progression from 3D modeling into more the graphic design thing. And then, when I wanted to move back to Canada, this opportunity came up with Bioware, which was with a small games group, like something you would play like on a Nintendo DS or something of that, small, like a phone or something. But it just kind of turned out as well. They were looking for a UI artist for the new Dragon Age game that was coming out. I didn't know what that was at the time, but they needed someone who could draw a lot of maps and icons and things like that, which was a very similar discipline. And I've been at Bioware since, and I've had a pretty good career at it since. So,
well, I'll show you soon enough. I hope you will, Mr. Lindley. Here's a list of what I want.
All right, so you've started on Dragon Age. It's your first, I guess, like a AAA or a really, really big project. What was that like? Were you scared to go from working in casual sort of like indie games to working at a bigger, well-known studio and on a big project like a new IP? Because I think you worked on the first Dragon Age game, correct?
Yeah. I came in for the last couple of years of the first Dragon Age, so huge transition because used to working on a team of maybe most like 8 people or whatever, and then to go to have like over 100 easy, and you only knew a small group of them. I mean, now I know most of everyone, but it's kind of overwhelming, just all the pieces that are involved to make a game of that scope, from the audio department, all the designers and the testing and everything. It was very overwhelming, a lot to learn.
Where you are now, is it UI Design Lead? Is that the correct title?
Yeah, that's the title. It's kind of a weird state, but yeah, I'm responsible for the design and art for the UI.
Was it just like with each game, it was like you're one step higher, that you were like a junior designer, then a senior designer, or a designer, then a senior designer, then a lead designer? Or can you walk us through that for the sake of people listening, if they're sort of on the ground floor and they want to be more, what that path might look like from your experience?
Yeah, like in our head, going back 10 years, we always had this understanding that you needed a couple years industry experience to get a job in the industry, which was very frustrating because how do you get a job in the industry? And that was kind of partly what led me to Shanghai. I was just searching for that experience. And even still, when I started at Bioware with 2 years game industry experience, I didn't have a lot of qualifications. So I was starting at an associate artist level, which is, the kind of the ground floor. That was something I was totally cool with because I just knew I could prove myself. So I just took, every opportunity I could. If it was draw all the maps or doing the little icons and things that people didn't necessarily wanted to do, I got to make that my own. So, doing achievement icons, you can spend a lot of time on that. Or I know I got a lot of feedback that there was, it was noticed that I was spending a lot of time on those things, and it just led to more opportunities as the games moved on, because there's so much going on with the game. There's lots of places, like if you want more responsibility, it's sometimes you get rewarded with a little bit too much. So, I moved into an artist role after about a year or so, which is just the next level up after associate artist. And at that level, you're kind of responsible for yourself, and you need a little less supervision, and you're just generating work. And a lot of people in the studio are at that level. It's a good place to be. I learned a lot, and I spent a couple of years, just putting that pressure time in. But and I'm a senior artist because you have your title of where your level is, and then there's your position on a project. So I was the UI lead on the project, but my title is senior artist. And so last couple of years, I've been a senior artist, which is I'm responsible for, other artists as well as maybe some programmers.
You worked your butt off, and you put in the time, and you put a lot of love into what you do, and then that was noticed. You just did it consistently, even when nobody was noticing. I'm sure at the beginning, you still did it. That's
a much more articulate way of saying it. Yes, that was the key. I mean, I work closely with a lot of other artists at Bioware, which is part of a great part of my role, because I have to touch so many parts of the game. You see it with the people that are there. An unhealthy amount, but they're the ones that are excelling, and concept artists are just drawing just an insane amount. And if there's something they don't know how to do, they're frustrated by it. The next few days, you just see them just grinding away at it, and and then a few days later, it's like that's something I could never have believed I could, or anybody could, do, like, from where you started. So it's all about just, putting in the time.
One of the things that I thought was interesting about our sort of shared background is that I always felt like I was at a disadvantage because I grew up. I tell people I grew up in a village, and I think that that's actually the technical designation for the place where we grew up, with a population of about 650 people. I'm not sure if it's we think that we're not enough, or from a small place and we got to prove ourselves by working harder, or we've got more heart. I guess we've got more Rocky Balboa. In Shanghai, we could see a marked difference from the people that we hired from Shanghai, and I'm speaking in broad strokes. People in Shanghai versus people from cities or towns outside of Shanghai. And I enjoyed working, generally speaking, more with the people from outside of Shanghai because they just tried harder, pretty much, 9 times out of 10. And so what do you think it was that made you push harder?
Yeah, like there is a difference in background, like with fellow artists like that I work with, people that are from cities and stuff. I was amazed by like the they had a lot more art opportunities, like different programs or things that they could study, whereas we had to internally make ourselves better. Like we just kind of sat in a corner and just drew because there was nothing for us to like explore, like, oh, we're going to do this mural project on the side of the school. Like there was nothing like that really in that scope for us. If you were going to excel, you just kind of ground away. Both are great, obviously, but I mean, I think you do get that kind of work ethic. And I'm not saying that there are not people that don't grind and do crazy amount of works that are from, big cities and stuff like that. But yeah, there is something to it. There's a few people we know that are doing well in the industry that, it's kind of crazy when you think about where we're from.
I have something more. Something none of your dry as dust professors and routine-ridden doctors have. Love, devotion, passion.
Can you tell people what it's kind of like working in a game studio? Is it all fun and game? Oh, I'm sure it's not all fun and games, but it seems like from the outside looking in that you're having a heck of a good time.
Yeah, like we have crazy, benefits, and it's an amazing environment. Like it's hard to quantify like what it, how fun it is to work there. We have free ice cream, just ready. Like it's hard to, it's just like we get to be kids. But that said, we have so many unique individuals. Like everybody's the delicate snowflake, and we have like crazy backgrounds, and we're all so crazy passionate about what we're working on. Like it all kind of boils over, and everybody like butts heads, but I'm like it's great. It's like it's a good environment, but at the same time, there's a lot of, it's not always super positive. In university, I remember like going through those harsh critiques in drawing, and that is one of the things that's probably made me grow the most. Like being able to critique someone else and take critiques, which I still have a lot of trouble with. But in that kind of environment, just imagine that with like so many millions of dollars on the line, you have a lot of people that are, really, really trying to get it right. So it's great to be able to have something you own that's part of the game that you get to play, and it's yours, and you can go down the hall and tell someone, like, I think this is that, or whatever. Like it's really great. Like it's kind of rewarding on a level that's addictive.
As we're recording this, I saw the latest incarnation of Dragon Age has come out. There's so much emotion. You just said, sometimes people are butting heads because they're so passionate about what they're doing. Once those review scores start coming out, because it's literally, I think, tomorrow. What's the day after review scores coming out? What's that day like?
Yeah, because like right now it's really great because everything's looking good. But a lot of people are taking vacation right now, obviously closely watching social media because we want to make sure, oh, did they like it? Did they like it? Depending on when you start on the project, I've been on it over three years. Some have been on it as long as 4. That's high school, invested in one project. Wow. Like one crazy anecdote, I won't say his name, but there was a designer that left after Dragon Age 2, the one before this game. And he decided, he was done with video games, and he went back to school. And he got a law degree and is practicing criminal law in the time it took us to make a Dragon Age. It's overwhelming. So now it's just kind of a state of relief. Like you have this kind of post, I've just been working crazy hours. So now it's quiet time, but we're all wired to work. So I'm sure we'll go right back to it.
been sort of a theme in the last few episodes on the podcast about finding your niche and like niching down. So previously we talked about building a portfolio specific to the artwork that you want to work on, and then having a blog that has a lot of artwork for the projects that you kind of want to work on. And I think for you, that like UI is so valuable, and I feel like there's not a whole lot of people doing that. Is that a misconception?
UI and UX is UX is kind of a new term, but like in games we're starting to like grow the community just because so many people are starting to realize, oh, you're having the same problems as I am. So it's kind of very fresh industry where there's a lot of people that are like getting in. I know a lot of people that have gotten into in game industry like UI related from web design.
Where I might have previously given people the advice to say, if you want to break in, find an underserved niche and then double down on that. And once you have your foot in the door, then you can sort of transition and blossom into, whatever kind of crazy thing that you want to do. But maybe hearing what you've just said, that's not such great advice, because there's actually the technical skills, the sort of like base level skills. There's a lot of people that actually have those. There's
a shared, discipline in these other fields. But since it's so new in the industry, we didn't have anybody doing it. And this is what you did to get here, right? And now it's becoming more evident, like, okay, graphic design, this is really great. If you have an idea of how to design flows of like someone going through an experience of like whether it's web pages and they're going here, then here, then here, and how do they get back? Now it's becoming like we're starting to see more of that, like graphic design, and from a lot of different places. And maybe that's just because they were filling a hole at the time, and then they just found out that they were naturally good at it.
Can we talk a little bit now about what makes a good icon? Like you said, it touches web, it touches graphic design, touches mobile, so many things that in video games we might think about icons a whole lot more because they're so important. Versus on the web, it's maybe like you have to do, you're making a web app, so you've got maximum 36 icons that you got to do, but you're doing, you guys are doing thousands. You're looking at thousands of icons.
Like ultimately the idea is that people don't even see. It just communicates what it needs to be. And it's blended in with the game in a way that, like, yep, that's just what I'm reading as something that the game world couldn't tell me. As far as tricks and that, you're just trying to see that something reads at all levels. I'll often work super large, but I'll just keep zooming out so that I'm trying to make sure that something reads smaller than it's actually displayed. Because if it communicates, at that level, then it's going to be successful. Everything has been pushing towards flat design. Apple's more recently moved that way. And I think that's great for graphics and being able to because you can be very punchy like road signs, and it can get those communications across, where if you're trying to render a little image, it can get, kind of lost and muddy in what you're trying to convey.
What kind of thought goes into a design? Like you talked about at the beginning of this podcast, designing for an icon of dignity.
Yeah.
And if you're presented with a creative problem like that, do you have a process that you go through or some way of exploring and trying different ideas?
Yeah, like me personally, I'll work on contact sheets. I'll write down all the things I'm going to work on. Just doing small thumbnails beside dignity or whatever is that one example, and you're just drawing to the right of it, like just things I'll start with. And generally, the first thing I think of, I throw away, because the first thing I think of is usually just the first thing everybody thinks of, and that's kind of just the well. So scrap your first idea and then move on to the second one and see where that takes you, and then just exploring different ideas. So I'll bang off, a couple of drawings just beside that first point, and then just moving down the list, seeing which ones jump out at me. And of course, the easy ones, that'll get you into a rhythm in your train of thought. Like I'll watch music, and then maybe I'll come back to that. Like, oh yeah, you know what? Monocle, I think was the thing that Tom came up with for dignity that was really great. And, it's just it was a fun exercise. And we just have lots down this road. And the great thing about those contact sheets is since so many more things come up through a development, we can go back to them and if I put a snowflake inside this fireball, that reads as this spell, or if I rotate this a little bit and put this with this, that's actually going to give me a new thing over here. And we definitely recycle and reuse things all over. And at the end, because this is years while we're going through all this stuff, we have to really review everything we do, and we'll just make very clean versions of these contact sheets and read, well, these ones should have this color palette, and then scrap the ones we don't like. It's amazing how many things accidentally look like a swastika or a nipple or whatever. So yeah, it's definitely an iterative process.
And when you say contact sheet, is this like a piece of paper in a binder, or is it some kind of a digital file that gets stored on the server and anyone can look at it?
Digital. I work in Photoshop mostly, so I work in Photoshop so much when I do draw, I still reach for the undo with my left hand.
I think a lot of people are like that.
Yeah.
Let's say somebody they're in web design and they wanted to make the transition to get into video games. What sort of like first steps or second steps would you suggest they take if they wanted to become a UI designer for video games?
I think just taking a screenshot from a video game that you like and redesigning some of the standard menus, which are not necessarily the interesting ones, like doing a HUD or something like that is fun. But trying to solve for something more complex. Like I love seeing when people mock up things for a developer. And I mean, that's a pretty great way to get hired, is when you actually solve something that a developer didn't do, or even just taking something that was really successful in a video game. And there's lots of like problems in video games come out. So seeing how people solve them, and have it as an exercise as well as create, a piece for your reel.
Oh, I love that. And I think I'm just going to riff on this idea one step further. If somebody's listening and they want to get into UI design, I've seen this example used so many times and it's so successful. Take the top 10 video games, take an iconic like screenshot from the game with lots of user interface elements, and go and redesign all the UI elements, and then release these all in one blog post, and then kind of make a ruckus on social media so that you get noticed, because people love looking at these lists of redone things. It's a phenomenal way for you to get noticed. And I feel like, has anyone done this before?
I've seen things like that been picked up by Kotaku or Skyrim, which is a great game. It's one of its most popular mods is its UI. I'm pretty sure that was covered on one of those news websites for games. Even just like people doing mashup concepts of characters, or whatever. Like if you do something that resonates with people, it's going to get picked up.
And once you're picked up, you're just on easy street. You're going straight to the top, baby. Yeah, that'll get you. At least you'll be on someone's radar. And if you're still producing great work and you happen to reach out to somebody, especially if they've seen your work, it's a huge plus, I think.
Indeed, but that is only dreaming. You talk like a fool. I would trade a century of practice for an ounce of inspiration. And I have that pike. Inspiration like a volcano.
But I usually ask the guests, is there somewhere that people can see your work or reach out to you? But I'm not sure if you have that. You're kind of a private guy, so I'll just put it out there.
I'm on Twitter. That's probably the best way to reach out to me. But yeah, sure.
I think your connection was just breaking up a little bit there. So what was your Twitter handle again?
Sorry, D_Lee.
Tyler D_Lee.
Yeah.
That's his Twitter handle, and you can see all the shenanigans that he's up to. Thank you so much, Ty, for being on the call. If you're listening to this and you wanted to get into UI design, you have a few good takeaways that you can use, and hopefully, help you get noticed or break in if you're in another industry. So thank you so much, Ty, for being on the call. I really appreciate you sharing your story with us.
Yeah, no problem.
That's what happens to all of us. You see something, it changes after.
That does it for another episode of the Pencil Kings podcast. If you'd like to check us out and see more about what we do, head on over to pencilkings.com. You can check us out on Facebook, Twitter, we're everywhere. And, well, that's it. See you guys soon.